Once, the god of death summoned one of his messengers and gave him a task: to retrieve the soul of a woman who had just passed away on earth. Without hesitation, the messenger bowed and descended. But when he arrived at the mortal world, his heart grew heavy. The sight before him was unbearable. The woman's lifeless body lay still, yet her 3 infant daughters, triplets, were unaware of the cruel fate that had just struck. One of the little girls was still clinging to her mother's breast, seeking comfort from someone who could no longer respond. Another wailed, her tiny fists clenched in distress. The third had exhausted herself from crying and lay asleep, tear stains dried on her soft cheeks. Their father had passed away long ago, and now they were utterly alone in the world. The messenger stood frozen. His hands trembled as he reached for the woman's soul, but stopped midway. How could he? How could he take away the only source of warmth and protection these helpless infants had ever known? His heart ached in a way he had never experienced before. Defying his orders, he returned to the heavens without completing his duty. The god of death sat upon his celestial throne, his gaze stern as he looked upon the troubled messenger. "You disobeyed my command," the god's voice echoed. The messenger knelt. "My lord, forgive me, but I could not take her soul. Her daughters, 3 helpless infants. They have no one left. Can't we spare her life just a little longer, just until they can stand on their own?" A deep silence followed. Then the god of death's expression darkened. "So you think you understand the universe better than its creator?" His voice thundered. "You believe you are wiser than the one who governs life and death?" The messenger lowered his head, but did not regret his decision. "For this defiance you will face punishment," the god declared. "You will remain on earth until you laugh at your own foolishness 3 times. Only then may you return." And with that, the messenger was cast down. The messenger awoke in a freezing alley. His celestial robes turned to tattered rags. He felt hunger for the first time. He felt cold. Not far away, a humble carpenter was heading to the market, coins jingling in his pocket. He had saved enough to buy warm clothing for his children, for winter was near. As he walked, he spotted the shivering stranger on the roadside, his lips pale from the cold. The carpenter hesitated, then sighed. "Come with me," he said, pulling the stranger up. "I don't have much, but I can't leave you like this." Despite knowing his wife would be furious, the carpenter spent the money meant for his children's clothes on food and a thick blanket for the stranger. When he brought him home, his wife erupted in anger. "You spent everything on a man we don't even know?" she shouted. "What about our children?" At that moment, the messenger laughed. The carpenter frowned. "Why are you laughing?" The messenger shook his head. "I'll tell you when I've laughed 3 times. He laughed because the woman could only see what was lost, money for their children's clothes, but not what was gained. She didn't know that by offering kindness, they had unknowingly welcomed a divine being into their home. Their act of generosity would soon bring them blessings far beyond what they could imagine. Over time, the messenger learned the carpenter's craft. Being divine, he quickly became skilled, creating furniture so fine that word spread across the kingdom. Soon, the once poor carpenter's shop became famous, and wealth followed. One day, a royal messenger arrived, carrying a rare piece of wood. "The king wants a special throne crafted from this," he instructed. "But be careful, do not carve a bench, only a throne." At that time, it was a custom in some lands that when a ruler passed away, they were seated on a wooden bench for their final rites, not a throne. Because God is the ultimate king of this world. The carpenter turned to the messenger. "This is an important task. Don't make a mistake." But for reasons beyond explanation, the messenger carved a bench instead. When the carpenter saw what had been made, he turned pale. "You've doomed us," he gasped. "The king wanted a throne. If we present this, we'll be punished." At that moment, the messenger laughed again. Just then, another royal messenger burst into the shop, out of breath. "Do not carve a throne," he announced. "The king has passed away. His final rites require a bench." The carpenter stared in shock. He fell to his knees, realizing that this man, this stranger he had taken in, had foreseen the future. The messenger smiled. "Now, do you understand?" The messenger laughed again, understanding the God's plan behind all this. He had laughed because the carpenter had worried over a mistake that was never a mistake at all. It had been part of a plan beyond human understanding. Days later, 3 noble young women entered the carpenter's shop, accompanied by an elderly lady. They wished to commission fine furniture for their upcoming weddings. As soon as the messenger saw them, his heart skipped a beat. They were the same triplets, the infants he had once pitied. With a trembling voice, he turned to the elderly lady. "May I ask, who are these young women?" The woman smiled warmly. "They are my daughters. I found them abandoned as babies, their mother having passed away. I had no children of my own, so I raised them as my own. They have grown up in wealth and love, and now they are all to be married into royal families." Tears welled in the messenger's eyes. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. The triplets, whom he had once feared for, had lived a life far better than he could have imagined. And then, for the 3rd time, he laughed. This time he laughed at himself, for his own foolishness, for thinking he knew better than fate itself. With that, his punishment was over. The messenger explained everything: his punishment, his lesson, and the wisdom he had gained. "I was foolish to believe that I knew better. Fate has a plan greater than we can ever understand. We only see what is in front of us, but the bigger picture is beyond our sight." And in the blink of an eye, he was gone, returning to the heavens, wiser than before. So, my dear friends, we often believe we know what's best. We cling to our worries and fears, thinking we understand the path ahead. But life, just like the divine plan, unfolds in ways beyond our understanding. What seems like a loss may lead to a greater gain. What seems like suffering may be preparing us for something better. So, when life doesn't go as planned, trust in the unseen, because God has a plan for everyone.